So I used to think financial freedom was a number, and then I became a dad, and everything changed for me. And I want to walk today through that journey from kind of a mental standpoint as to how I got to the definition I have today versus what I had as a definition in my head years ago. So I'm 33 now for perspective. I'm an old man. And early on, let's call it 21, 22 years old, I'm just about graduating college. I'm been dating my wife, my now wife, for 7 years at that point in time, 6 years, 5 years. I don't remember. 2021, 21. I don't know. It was quite some time. Don't tell her. And so, we were very serious relationship. I knew post college, my focus was going to get CPA and probably propose. And that definitely happened very quickly. I think in March of 2015 is when I officially proposed, and that was 3 months after I graduated college in December of 2014. And I was studying for my CPA. And the only focus on my mind and what we talked about was financial freedom for us at that point in time meant, living a life that we wanted to live without worrying about a boss or going to a job every single day. And her and I made independently great money. When we first started, we both had our own careers, and independently, neither one of us were dependent on each other, but we collectively worked as a unit and utilized both of our incomes to fast track our goals. And with that process, as I've talked about many times, we paid off a ton of debt. Like, we paid off $304,000 of debt in 5 years. We became millionaires by 30. We became financially free by 32. It was a pretty quick trajectory as far as like from when we started to when we really got we knocked everything out. All in all, it's been about 13 years, let's call it, give or take, from when we started to like current day. But like the old definition of financial freedom was so much different than today. And I think it's important for anyone out there listening to what financial freedom is. I'm going to give you guys active tips today as to how to achieve this financial freedom in a practical sense, because you know how I roll. I don't like impractical or just like theory based stuff. I like practicality, kind of what we've actually done. And on top of that, I want to share the shift that fatherhood had on me in particular with what I viewed financial freedom as. So like I said, the old definition of financial freedom was like hustle and grind culture. Let's work as hard and as long as possible. Let's make the most money possible. Let's get to our goals the quickest way possible with our automated financial system that we built. And if we can do that, like, I've checked the box of life off, and like we've won the game of life. And that was our only focus. And like we weren't trying to have kids right off the bat. Like that wasn't a huge goal. We definitely wanted to have kids, but like early in our career, especially at 23 years old, 22 years old, like it wasn't really a conversation quite then. We wanted to get in our house, we wanted to get married, we wanted to kind of do it strategically. And everything we did was like hustle, hustle, hustle. And like my wife and I were, obviously we had no kids at the time. We had two dogs, and we were gone from sunrise to sunset at our careers. I was at Deloitte. She was at Lumberman's in a sales position. She was on the road a lot traveling, and we would just constantly be working at all times. And then on the weekends, we would do like side hustle projects and make more money, and just constantly be finding ways to make more money to fast track our goals. And we were very intentional. I don't think it was a bad idea necessarily, but we never really had the slowdown period. And really what I've always was, and I said at that point in time, I was like, Aaron, I think what we're going to do is we're going to list out all these goals, these financial freedom goals, like 2.5 million in the brokerage alone was kind of our goal. And everything else, obviously, accumulated outside of that, real estate, our other equity positions, like in tax or in retirement types of accounts, those are like gravy. But if we get 2.5 in the brokerage alone, we are officially financially free in our terms based on what our needs are. And so we pushed for that. And, I always would say, I'll slow down once we hit this number. And I think that was a really short-sighted way of looking at it. And I think that was the old way to look at it. And I think that has shifted entirely with our children. And so we have two beautiful little daughters, Logan, who is 3 years old, 3.5 now, and Ellie, who is 1.5 years old. They are the biggest blessings in my life. I just got done reading a book to Ellie a second ago. Every morning she's like, Dad, let's read books. And I sit down in my chair and I read books for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever she needs. And that is kind of the definition of my financial freedom now. the ability to do whatever, whenever, with whoever. And so I think fatherhood really changed my why. And here's kind of a general idea as to why this happened. I think there was a big emotional shift, just for me in general. Obviously, it's in a father's DNA. I know there's woke people out there that are going to be mad at me saying this for whatever reason, but it's part of human nature, so get over it. And it's in a father's DNA to provide at a high level, and that is something I can't explain. But when we had children, and especially when my wife was, announced, officially we were having a child on the way, there was something in me as a male I can't explain that just kicked me into another dimension and another gear to take this to the next level. And we were working towards financial freedom, but we weren't there at that point in time. And 3 weeks before Logan was born, she obviously started her Logan was I quit my 9 to 5. I quit basically Deloitte. And Logan was born 3 months or 3 weeks later in September, and we literally had a whole different life all of a sudden very quickly. And obviously my wife was home for maternity leave for a couple months. So there was like that weird time period of like 2 months where she was home full time, basically taking care of Logan full time. And then I was just working on, Budget Dog and the business and stuff like that. And it was brand new to me. So I was trying to build, I was trying to travel, I was doing all these different things. And it was a big adjustment for me. But there was that like deep, deep, almost fear that if I don't provide, I'm a failure. And that was like a feeling I have. And I think a lot of men out there can definitely relate to what I'm talking about, especially when you have your first child and she comes into this world or he comes into this world, and it's just like it's an experience like no other. I can't, for anyone that doesn't have children, it's you can't explain it. But for those that do have children, you understand that feeling when you bring a child into this world for the first time. And I remember specifically, I was in the hospital, and even leading up to the pregnancy, like I knew there was definitely a shift, but it was still like it wasn't real. And I think a lot of guys can probably relate to that. Like obviously the mom's going to doctor's appointments, she's feeling different, she's seeing physically being different, and the guy just like it's just a weird experience. It's like it's not real until it's real. And all of a sudden, when she was here and I was holding her for the first time, I lost my breath, like literally lost my breath to a feeling I'd never had before. Almost like somebody gut punched me, but I was like happy, joyful, like very weird experience. And I remember holding her, Logan, for the first time in where we, obviously gave birth to the hospital. And the nurse like stared at me. She's like, "Dad, you okay?" And I was like, totally okay. But like, I couldn't speak. It was very bizarre. And like that moment on, was like, I just brought a child into this world. This is my responsibility to give her the best, take care of her, spend the most time with her. And it was a feeling I can't explain, but it was an emotional shift that I had at that point in time in the hospital, even more so than when the announcement came that my wife was pregnant, which came on my birthday, by the way. Um, where that time became way more valuable than money, but money got me the time that was needed. And so financial freedom very quickly became not really optional, but urgent. And it even became more apparent to me as the situation kind of played out. And for those that have been following for quite some time, right off the bat, we knew. And I remember asking this in the hospital. They give the child the first bath, and I was like, Logan was screaming at the top of her lungs, like such a blood curdling scream. And I've been around kids my whole life. My little brother is 10 years younger than me. So like I would go to the hospital for like two of my three brothers, and I actually remember the experience of watching my brothers be born and being with them. And I grew up with little kid, like my little brothers, and had a lot of like just nephews and stuff growing up. So like I'm very good and understand how children are. Um, and I remember specifically there was something different about the way my daughter screamed, and just like it wasn't that first time parent thing. And a lot of people would point to that, all your first time parents, and it was very annoying because we knew it wasn't. We had a gut feeling that you as parent know more than anybody else about your child. And we were right. But at the time, the first couple of months, like everyone just kept saying, "Oh, she'll be okay. She'll be fine." We knew there was something off, and all the doctors said she was perfectly healthy until 5 months in. And it was January 29th of 2021. And actually, it was 2022. and she had her first seizure, and didn't react too heavy to that. It was pretty calm, cool, and collected. And then we went to the hospital. They said, hey, if anything happens in 24 hours, come back and there'll be something more significant, but some kids experience this. It didn't make me feel great, but I was like, okay, let's go home. The second seizure happened within 24 hours, and I knew our entire life shifted at that moment. I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what that really meant at that point in time. I do know now, but at the time I was such a young, Aaron and I were 5 months into being parents. I just quit my 9 to 5, and our whole life just changed right then and right there, to where financial freedom was not optional. It was urgent, very urgent. Because if Logan, who was diagnosed with Dravet syndrome, wasn't with my wife 24/7, her development would be hindered in many different ways. And so at that point in time, when she had the seizure, I was actually staying home with her full time. I was staying home for the first about 8, 9 months with Logan full time. And so the first, like, my wife would go to work, I'd wake up, take care of her all day. And then when my wife got home, let's call it 4 or 5 o'clock, we would switch duties. My wife would start taking care of her. And then I would start building, the business, after. And I would do what I could during nap time, but I had to hold her. For anyone that knows the real detail, I would hold her in my arm for 3 hours, in a pitch black room. So I didn't really have a whole lot of leeway to build, and any sound would cause a seizure. The light hit her in the wrong direction through the window could cause a seizure. Any bath water, couldn't really do many baths. It was very, somebody rang our doorbell, the dogs barked, that could cause this. It was so sensitive, I can't even explain. You drop a pan on the ground, you're putting away dishes, in the clink of the spoons and forks. Like, I'm talking like extreme sensitivity, to where she was strapped on my the dad strap thing. And that was very, very challenging, to say the least, but we knew that we could do it, we could push through it. And then, but the bigger thing there at that point is, like, I knew I had to get Aaron out of her 9 to 5, and Aaron knew that. Like, we didn't directly say that right away, but there was a gut feeling, especially as a male provider. You guys can all relate. Being the dad of the family, you have a special needs situation, or you have something where you have that your wife has the urge to stay home naturally to take care of the children. There's something that kicks into another gear that you can't explain, and I don't have words for it, but you just know right away. And I was on a podcast on, I think October of that year, the first year before she was even had seizures, 2021. 2 months into her, 1.5 months into her being born. And I said I was going to retire my wife within 24 or within 12 months or 1 year. And 363 days later, with the seizure happening in between, we were able to quit my wife's 9 to 5. And I think this is what the conversation today is about, is the change in financial freedom for us, and for us as a couple, as a family, me as an individual. It was no longer about just hitting a number to hit a number to be free from the financial world. It was, or from the work world. It was me providing a lifestyle for my child that needed it, and for my wife to be able to complement that situation and provide for that situation that she needed. And that really changed my whole world. And this was, as of today, it's April 2025. This was, like I said, the news that I got. The first seizure was January 29th of 2022. So it's been about 3 years since. And we were in 3 houses ago when this happened. We've lived in 3 houses in 3 years, which is insane to think about when you look back at it. We moved across the country. We lost our one house when we moved across the country to mold and mycotoxins. It's been story after story after story. But one thing that's been present this whole time is that we'll fight for that little girl, and we'll make sure she has the best life possible. And so financial freedom shifted from numbers to supporting a child with special needs that has Dravet syndrome, that has extreme health challenges that I can't really put into words. It's not about how much money I can actually accumulate. It's about how much of me and my family gets while I'm alive as well. So I think there's a lot of people that talk about financial freedom that talk about like the end goal. Um, what do my kids get when I pass away? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I've always thought like, why don't you let your kid live the life they want to live during your time here? Like, why wait till 60 or you're 90 or 100 years old and your kid's 60 or 70, then you give them a couple $1 million? Like, nothing that's not helpful, but like, why not help them when they're 5, when they're 18, when they're 26? I think that's so much more helpful. And that's something that was very, very important to me. And not only from a health perspective, but from a financial perspective, like my other daughter, perfectly healthy, no, neurological condition. And I want to be able to provide a great life when she's a child, when she's early teens, when she's in, let's call it her early adulthood. And I want to be able to give them a head start in many different ways. And I think there's an obligation for me to do that. And I've never, I didn't get that technically speaking with any dollars after 16 years old. But I do think the goal is to continue to improve your family tree down the line. And I expect my girls to be able to do the same for their families and also be able to give back at a high rate and be able to be very giving and very generous and all this kind of these other things that are very important. But financial freedom is now that. Financial freedom is now me being able to record a podcast on a Tuesday morning. My wife, I see her outside literally walking down the street right now with my daughters. Beautiful sunny morning. And I want to live that, and I want everyone else to be able to live that if they choose to do so. Now, your definition of financial freedom might be different than mine, and that's totally fine. I've had different challenges than you, and not to downplay any other challenges that are out there, but my challenges are different than somebody else's. So my goals and my drive for financial freedom was so much different than the next person. And some people out there might have the very similar situation to me, might be listening to this, might be relating in a big way. But other than, health challenges, a lot of people out here want better for their children, whether or not they have a health condition. Like I still want just as good for Ellie as I want for Logan. And Ellie doesn't necessarily have health challenges per se. And so if you're a parent out there listening, you're trying to take this to the next level from a financial freedom perspective, I want you to realize that freedom and financial freedom comes with time, and it's not black or white, and it's a progression upward. And if you start today, you can get there, and your life shifts along the way, not waiting until the end goal. And I think that's a very important concept. So when we moved across the country, when we decided, hey, my daughter's having significant issues, we need to get to a Dravet specialist in DFW, let's move. We were not financially free, but I was able to retire my wife at that point in time, and my wife was able to stay at home with Logan full time, even though we weren't financially free, because we had an income adjustment and shift, because we made that work. We focused on the goal at hand, what needed to happen to make that move. And we did that. And at one point, when I quit my 9 to 5, we were dependent on Aaron's job initially, and it quickly shifted. And we made sure we communicated very closely in order for that to happen. And so if you're a spouse, you're married right now, and you have two working spouses, maybe the goal is for one of you guys to stay at home, and that's okay. And if you want to do that, you can work towards that before you're financially free. But you also can craft a plan to change your lifestyle here and now, and also long-term with financial freedom. And that's exactly what we did. And I think a lot of people can do that if they just focus in on step-by-step plan. This is what I help my students with. If you're looking to do this, go in the show notes below and book a call with my team. And we can help you do this exact pathway. I've done it. Like I've done it for myself. I've done it for other people, other students. Multiple other students have done this. A lot of people have taken a step back in a career that was making a lot of money to a career they really have passion about but makes less money, and they were able to adjust their life because they knew what true life looked like, what they really wanted to live, and they didn't want the golden handcuffs to handcuff them long term. So they've taken a shift backwards, and you have an opportunity to do that. And so financial freedom is going to look different for everybody. This is, my podcast. Obviously, I'm talking about my experience and kind of what we went through in order to like push us forward and propel us forward to financial freedom, because it was urgent. It was very urgent, based on our lifestyle. But if you're out there and you're thinking about how to do this, these are things you can actively and practically do. You can start to optimize for the time versus just a bigger dollar. You can optimize for sustainable wealth, not just like running till the wheels fall off and living here and now, only, into where you're hustling and grinding and just not living a real true fun life here and later. And I think there's balances of ways to do both of these things. And if you're looking to do that, like, we help people do this all the time. Don't feel alone. Don't feel like you have to do this on your own. Like, there's professionals out there that have done and mastered this. And I think there's some practical frameworks for any parent out there chasing the freedom. I think the mindset really matters. So, like, what matters most to you while you're doing this is important, because, like, I have a drive for my daughter. I have a drive for my family. Like, there is nothing that beats that from, like, a true motivational perspective. If you don't have a true why, you're just like, hey, let's go back to my old self. I just want a lot of money to leave corporate finance, or, finance and my job, and I want my wife to leave her job, and, like, we just want to make as much money as possible. There's not as, like, much drive and motivation for that. Trust me, there's not. Then, like, when you have a true need, like a child's health, especially your own child, there's nothing like it. And so really understand what matters most to you and stop waiting for someday. I'm so done with hearing people chatter about what they want, but then they say, oh, well, I'll do it in 4 years when the kids are out of school, or I'll do it here when we're out of debt, or the time starts now. Debt payoff is part of this process. We paid off $304,000 in 5 years. Investing is part of this process. A child investing is part of this process. Budgeting is part of this process. Investing is part of this process. Insurance is part of this process. Estate planning is part of this process. Everything you're doing financially starts now, and it's part of the plan. It's part of the process. You need to start now. Do not wait for someday. And I don't force anybody to do this, but if you're out here saying that you're going to do it, don't wait for, like, next week. Like, just do it today, or you're never going to do it. Some tactical financial steps that you guys could start doing towards this is, you got to get your emergency fund and insurances in place, the protection agency. When we left their 9 to 5, we made sure we had the emergency fund, the insurances of, if I was disabled, like, all of the income would continue with disability income, or, long-term disability. The emergency fund would be there if I fell on my face. Like, those safety measures before you take a leap of faith sometimes are pertinent to long-term health and wealth. Secondly, invest for time freedom, not just for retirement. So, like, a lot of people are, like, aiming for this retirement goal, and I think that's important. And I always start there, but really shift it upwards to where the focus should be time freedom. Lastly, actually a few things. Build recurring revenue from a side hustle, investments, or a business. That's exactly what we did. We built a recurring model on the side hustle side of things while we're working our W-2 to give us an extra leeway. And then on top of that, we worked for the investment side, and we built our investments, and we built our business, and all of those other things that came along with that. Do not let that slip by, whether it be just one or all of those. Make sure that's a primary focus, because that's what sustains you. Sustainable wealth I talked about, in order to have recurring revenue from investments or side hustles or business, has to happen. Has to happen, because you never know when you're in the hospital or something happens. Next is protect time like money. So do not give up your time like it's nothing, or go do everything because you know you can save money, but you waste all your time. Time is your most precious asset. Use it accordingly. And simplify your definition of rich. A lot of people think rich is like stuff, or a big fancy house, or big fancy car. It's living the life that you want to live on your own terms. If you start to piece that together, and you go into my resources that I have for free on my social media channels, or you've been in my ecosystem, you've come to my 3-day event, my literally free 3-day event, where I give you everything. I show you how to start this process. Like, you're going to do really, really well. But also, if you start today, you're going to do the best, because you're going to fail in the beginning, and that's okay. But fail fast so that you learn and move on fast. That is the most important thing. So my most important takeaway from today is obviously define why, in the big why. What is your financial freedom reason? You don't also need millions to be financially free. I think that's a misconception that we've given out in the financial community, that you need millions to become financially free. That's not the case. You need clarity, you need intentionality, and you need the courage to live aligned with your values. Lastly, financial freedom isn't the end goal. It's a tool to help you show up fully as a parent, as a father, as a wife, as a mom, as a husband, and as a human being. so that you're there for your children, you're there for your family, and that you're able to be the best version of yourself going forward, which needs to have financial freedom with it in order to be yourself. If you're not able to take care of yourself internally, it is impossible to give the most of yourself and being generous and giving and all these other things we talk about quite often. So I hope you guys take this podcast to heart today. And I hope this helps tremendously, because this is how you take it to the next level and you build the life that you deserve. Appreciate you guys, and I will see you next week.
You've been listening to Money on My Mind with your host, Brendan Schlagbaum. If you found value in today's discussion, share it with someone who could benefit from it too. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, so you never miss a money mastery tip. Until next time, stay passionate about your financial journey and keep taking bold steps towards your money goals.